I believe in feminism. I believe in equality for all people regardless of their differences. I do not believe in misandry. Feminism is the belief of the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes. Misandry is the hatred of, contempt for, or prejudice against men or boys. Feminism and misandry are not the same things. All around us, we hear the terms feminazi and man-hater associated with the term feminist. We hear it in the halls as people feel threatened by the women who aren't afraid to speak their minds in class. We hear it online, on social media, in posts aimed at squashing and bringing shame to those who strive for equality. Let me make this clear. Feminism is for equality, not to raise women above men, not to belittle men, but to simply bring the two together to reach a state where women do not feel threatened because of their gender. I have developed this belief and learned how to support it as I've grown up in an ever-changing society shaped by the patriarchy who aims to put both women and men into boxes of shame and silence. I have learned that the women around me are doing everything they can to close the gap between men and women, all while being oppressed and silenced in the process. I have watched my mother's perseverance and strength as she uses her voice for the good of those around her, even as she is frustrated and torn down by men who refuse to listen to the insight she has as an experienced female professional. As a young girl growing up being told that I was bossy and loud, my mother was there every night to tell me that I was not bossy. I was a young female leader. I was not loud. I had a voice and something to say. And most importantly, that I should, and I quote, take no crap off of anyone. Women all around our world are standing up with the support of other strong women who refuse to allow equality to be overlooked. Women who refuse to allow young girls and boys to grow up in a time where anyone feels threatened because of their differences, whatever they may be. 2 summers ago, I was 13 years old, very involved with ballet and training with the Boston Ballet for the summer. Both of my parents work and they couldn't drive me to my rehearsals, but that didn't bother me. I would have to take the bus from the Exit 3 bus stop down into Boston, walk through the city alone, and catch a city bus out to the studio. See, I was previously a little white private school girl, afraid of and unaware of the big bad world. But on my very first walk through that city, at the age of 13, I was whistled at, had a stranger come up to me and put his arm around me, and I was asked to get into a man's car. I learned then that there were indeed bad people in the world, and in that moment I was afraid. I was afraid for what would come. I was afraid for what I was going to do next. I was afraid for my life. Now I see your faces looking at me. Did that really happen? Yes. What did I do? I learned to put my head down and walk with my house keys between my knuckles. So if you're sitting here uncomfortable by the fact that a young girl is standing here before you, feeling attacked by the words coming out of her mouth, please know that my intention and my belief is to support the exact opposite of that. I believe that no person should feel attacked or threatened because of their gender. I believe that stereotypes are the downfall of these movements because it is so easy to generalize. But I know, as you should know, that the feminist movement is not about an attack on men. It is as much about helping men to understand the struggles that women face as it is about supporting the men who support us. How many of you men in the audience have ever been told to man up for having differing, seemingly less masculine feelings towards an issue? See, feminism is about just that. It is about breaking down the patriarchal norms that squash sensitivity and reflectiveness, which results in unhappiness and hurting those you love. As I've grown up, I've seen politicians and celebrities assault and belittle women in the workplace, on television, in their homes, and online. But for every terrible person I've seen, there's been another strong person there to remind little girls and boys that they matter, to remind little girls and boys that they have every right that the other does, to remind little girls and boys that all of their voices should be heard. But I've also learned that we cannot overlook the countless men doing everything in their power to support the feminist movement. We cannot forget about each and every person who values women and their accomplishments and treats them as equals. Equality for all people is what we are striving for, not equality at the expense of men. As a young girl growing up around the stereotypical boys and the stereotypical girls, I've noticed what damage is really done to us through needing to be feminine or masculine. Now, there will always be questions about myself that I wonder. What would my life be like if I hadn't been forced into dance and I had decided to become an athlete? What could it have been like if my favorite color was never pink and I was never putting on my mom's lip gloss before 2nd grade? And I think to myself, what if boys were not squashed and desensitized? How would our world be different if boys and girls didn't have so much pressure on them to fit into a box? I have learned from every woman who has ever stood up and said, "Me too." I have learned from every woman who has stood upon a stage and spoke with fiery fury at the state of our nation and the world's views towards women. And most recently, I have learned so much from the bravery of Dr. Ford as she gave up her career and reputation in order to protect our country and the little girls and boys growing up in it. I'm telling you from personal experience that if our society continues to submit to even the slightest pressure from the patriarchy aimed at tearing down those who are fighting with every piece of them for equality, then we will never be able to escape the terror brought to millions. I promise you this, feminism does not make you weak. It does not make you less masculine. All feminism does is support you and what makes you great. Feminism wants to lift you up, to walk with those of us who are proud of who we are and are making our own paths so that no other little girls grow up thinking they're worthless or need to be afraid of men. Thank you.